It's good to be able to welcome each of you and thank you for joining us today at TheaterWise Annual Benefit, which is featuring a discussion of the new film, Performing Juliet. Nelson Fitch, photographer, and Veronica Roth, novelist and author of the Divergent trilogy.
Hi, thank you, Kevin. I'm Nelson. My tall task today is to introduce András Visky, a dear friend, and someone I wish I could personally introduce to pretty much everybody I know. András has been a friend of my family since the mid-90s, and it was around 16 years ago with my brother and uncle that I first visited Romania and the Visky house. So for that 16 years, he's been an inspiration to me. And I know I'm not alone in considering the Visky's kitchen table to be among the most special places in the world. It really is open to all kinds of people, nobody's, somebody's, all the time, pretty much anytime. If you've met him, you know he's a man with incredible intellectual capacity, original insights, great humor, and of course, deep experience. For those who haven't met him, I'll fill in some gaps. And if you're interested in an in-depth bio and good look at his work and philosophy, there is a book, András Visky's Barrack Dramaturgy from Chicago Press, which you should definitely pick up. Today, András is a dramaturg and professor with a brilliant international reputation and many awards. He lives in Cluj-Napoca, Romania, where he serves as Associate Artistic Director at the Hungarian Theatre of Cluj. His route to Cluj and to his career as a theater person was quite circuitous. It began in communist Romania, where his father was a minister of the Hungarian Reformed Church. When András was 2, his father was sentenced to 22 years in prison. The regime did not like his flavor of Christian teaching. And András, his 6 siblings, and his mother, Julia, were sent to a place like a gulag. So then András, a 2-year-old child, was, as well as his siblings, specifically called out by name, deemed by the authorities to be a danger to the communist regime. Indeed, he says, nothing is more surreal than reality. Several years later, they were released, and András effectively met his father for the first time then. András wrote poetry, studied engineering, and served as a local politician who opposed the Romanian dictatorship. After the fall of communism in '89 and resisting the pressure to continue in politics, András moved to Cluj-Napoca for the university and theater. He describes Cluj as having an incredible creative and intellectual energy at that time. András was destined for the theater, perpetually investigating the present time of the word, how the word becomes alive, how it becomes a bodily reality. This question, of course, is central to the film we've seen. His approach to the theater, known as Barrack Dramaturgy and influenced by his literal yet absurd experience of captivity, prioritizes the community and togetherness of people gathered in a theater space. I consider András's emphasis on people, or encounters among people, to be unique and somewhat defining. A new person is always a new world, a new door to the universe, he once told me. In 2011, András and I worked together on a photo project at the Hungarian Theatre. As we developed a concept to photograph the crew building and tearing down sets, I brought up concerns that the project wasn't original enough, it lacked cleverness, and it wasn't conceptual enough for me. I found out those things are not ultimate values for András, and he swiftly stamped this out. Do the work, encounter the people, let something happen. That direction was formative for me, and I expect this approach is partly responsible for the deep impression he leaves on those he works with. András's investigations in the theater are also theological investigations, and his dual role as accomplished theater professional and deep theologian has both perplexed and drawn in countless people. This is because it's not really dual at all. They're one and the same for him. This is not a normal thing, and I believe we'd have a much better world if people could manage that. The culture cannot be separated, he says. Everybody knows I'm a believer, but I'm not living under the pressure of an ideology. András describes his father's sermons as, quote, big holy theaters, and has considered them to be his first encounter of the theater. In those moments, the present time of the word was real, the word became alive. Whether it's about God, the theater, art, philosophy, András speaks plainly, provocatively, and profoundly. So finally, I am honored to introduce András Visky.
I hope that you can hear me. I'm speaking from Cluj, Transylvania now, I wish you were here, Nelson and Veronica. Cluj is expecting you both, you know very well. And it's very honoring for me that Cluj is one of your most favorite place in your heart and in the world. And that's beautiful. What I'm going to say now, it's very short. First of all, I'm very honored that the movie has been presented for the first time today. I hope that everybody could survive it. And I'm very interested to learn your opinion about the movie. But now I would like to say a few words about Melissa, because without Melissa, this movie couldn't happen. But not only the movie, some of my plays also, which were written because of her inspiration. And those plays who were presented, for instance, for the first time in Chicago by Theater Y, then went around the world. And I think that this is beautiful. The first thing I want to say about Melissa is that Melissa has become very close to us, to my family. She's having two younger sisters and two younger brothers in my family, because she stayed with us several times. And we witnessed also here in Transylvania, in the mythical mountains of Transylvania, her marriage with Evan Hill, which was a lot of fun. And those who join my yearly summer university, they keep speaking about this event, which was a performance of the encountering. It was a performance of the beauty of people and the world we are living in. The second thing what I want to tell about Melissa is that for me, she's a combination of fortitude and fragility. This is the secret of the theater. Those actors and actresses are important, or are becoming important for us, who can combine these two things which seems to be very far from each other, but they are not, because this is the core of the humanity, in my opinion. Because when she's on the stage, you can feel this embodiment of the secret that you have to find your strengths in your fragility, and you have to find your feebleness in your strengths. And I think that this is, in a way, the core of the creative life. For me, the theater is defining the minimal humanity in us. That's why it's so, probably it's important. That's why we cannot live without it. And this is essential for me. The third thing which is important to say about Melissa, and this is also a paradox, I think, but who can speak about a creative life without paradoxes? The third thing would be that in our profession, the most problematic occurrence is the success. The success is the biggest, can become the biggest banana spiel in the life of a person. I think that Melissa is achieving something very special, a combination of the success and moral, social, political efficacy. And I think that this is another secret of the theater. The theater in its real shape offers to us our own stories, and offering to us our own stories that mean for me that we can recognize ourselves as somebody else, and we can recognize somebody else as ourselves. And I think that this is the aesthetics of the theater why, and this is so important for me. So please welcome Melissa. Don't forget that she's a close friend of me, and I will protect her from everything, every time. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, András. Thank you for this introduction. Thank you for this terrifying introduction to many of you through this film. I feel genuinely exposed before all of you today. And this is a strange relationship that we find ourselves in. It's a bit one direction. But I have a moment here to interrogate András and balance the scales a little bit. So, András, when we began shooting this documentary, I told you that my life was yours to investigate, but that I didn't want to discuss my ex-husband on camera. And in the end, that is precisely what you asked me to speak about and what you made the focus of this film. You interviewed me for hours and left out large portions of my story. How did you choose what scenes to take from my life?
Okay. Well, Melissa, I'm not really prepared for this hard question. You know, I think that when you are doing a piece of art, after a while you have to forget about everything, and you have to try to grasp yourself in the movie. You know, people are telling that Juliet is a play about my mother. Now I have to say openly for most of you that it's a play about me, because it's not possible to write a play about your mother avoiding yourself, your problems, your unbeliefs, your doubts, your faults in the play. So it happened the same in the movie. I wanted to create a very fierce and strong portrait of you, and I didn't want to hide anything maybe painful in this story.
Fair, and in the spirit of the theater as a sharply polished mirror, and in the fact that you already confessed that Juliet is your confession and not your mother's, what is your confession in this film?
First of all, I confess my friendship towards you. I confess, yes, and I confess my solidarity towards you, because, you know, for me, it was a very big surprise, the way how your life made big tournament. It was a very dramatic moment when I faced your story. When we first discussed about the movie, I told to you, tell me your story and don't hide anything, not knowing what I'm speaking about. And then it came out that you have something to tell publicly. And these stories, I think these experiences are extremely hard to tell publicly. And I'm very honored and proud of you at the same time because of your courage. This is what I told earlier, the fragility and the fortitude, which is a miracle in you. We know, probably all of us, that on the stage, the role is hiding our public confessions. We can do extremely bloody and dark, or maybe joyful public confessions, but our audience would consider those as our character confessing now to the public. But in a documentary, things are more, I would say, clear. But in the mirror of the theater, which I proposed in this movie, I hope that I could offer another perspective to understand the suffering and to create a parallel mirror. So to create a mirror game, to put two different sufferings in the same space, and to offer this possibility of contemplating about our situation in the world. We are all suffering. We are all having joys, joyful events and moments, and we need to confess these things more or less publicly.
You're already saying some of this, but your concept of barrack dramaturgy, which really defined the theater for me as a young artist, which supposes that we are, that the ritual of theater is one where we willingly incarcerate ourselves with a group of strangers around a problem, and no one is allowed to leave until we've arrived at a new place together. And you've told me that you hoped for a catharsis for me and for the audience through this film. So what is this new place where we find ourselves now? What is this catharsis that you speak of? What does it mean to reconstruct our identity or to heal through the theater?
Well, I think that the hardest part of this question is how to tell our story in order to get to this catharsis. This was my problem for years and years, because being the youngest in my family, I'm the seventh. This is a very meaningful number for me, being the seventh child of this very fragile and beautiful mother who suffered a lot in this Romanian gulag to keep us alive. I promised to her when I was less than 3 years old, this is the memory of my family, that I will write everything what happened to us in order to offer a possibility of healing of our wounds, if it's possible. This. So I think that now I would say the only lay place, not religious, but lay in the culture, is the theater, which gathers together really persons, and this offer for every one of us the possibility of the public confession, to take part in the story of somebody else, is already, it's a trauma healing. It's a trauma treatment, if you want, because we recognize our traumas in the stories told by actors, actresses on the stage. So I think that from this point of view, Berg dramaturgy for me, it's a universal state of the human being. All of us, we experienced of being imprisoned. Being imprisoned, for instance, in the lack of the hope of something. This is a prison. When I don't hope that I can get through this thing. But in the theater, the confessions are always a communal event. This is so meaningful about it. So is the space, the theater, I think is this, and your experience is very meaningful for me from this point of view also, that on the stage is always very visible when somebody's lying, because you feel that something is not there. You know, like two persons are there, two separate persons are. It's a cleavage. It's an abyss in between two souls, which are wrestling and striving for a meaningful moment. So I think these kind of expressions are going to become more and more meaningful in our lives. Even this pandemic is speaking about this. The personal closeness is having an unimagined, before unimagined value, and is become more and more valuable. That's why I think that from this point of view, the theater will become the art of the century, if you want. And that's why I invite Veronica Roth also to write plays for you and for Theater Y.
Thank you, András. I agree. I feel like the pandemic has exposed the gap between who I am and who I imagine myself to be. And the film does the same. I definitely agree. I think we're going to go ahead and open it up now to questions from all of you. If you want to type them in the chat box, we're going to select just a few in the interest of time. And maybe if there are more, we will, maybe András and I can have another Zoom meeting and record it and share answers to the rest of your questions in time. So I'm going to take the first question. Who is Peter A. Tony Weller, i.e. the person the film is dedicated to? This is my grandfather, who gave a large sum of money to the making of this film, and who in the later years of his life became larger. I think all of us who know him would admit that he became a person as he was closing the end of his life who could handle hard truth. And I'm grateful for his presence in our family and grateful for this film thanks to him. Another question. Evan? How did you construct the arc of the piece from these disparate stories and images, András?
We are speaking about the movie now, right? About the film, yes. Well, it was quite a long process to construct the movie. First of all, we constructed a virtual performance of Juliet at Studebaker Theatre. A virtual performance because has been never opened, only filmed. And we used the entire space of the theater. That was a great opportunity for us to use the entire building as a set. Then we did two different types of interviews with Melissa. Finally, the dramaturgy of the movie is a hidden dialogue in between Melissa as a real person and Melissa as a character playing about eternal and unconditional love. The construction of the movie, this was my intention to do, doesn't want to the movie doesn't want to influence the audience. I like to leave my audience a little bit alone, because leaving a little bit the audience alone and not offering ultimate the responses, in this way the audience can, this is what I hope, can relate and identify with the story. So the dramaturgy is a little bit like a music piece. This was my intent and our intent, and my intent was to present a beautiful soul.
Thank you. Next question. Okay, someone saw an earlier version of this film. Nick saw an earlier version of this film about a year ago and is wondering what you thought was missing from this version, that you did reshoots or re-interview or recut.
I think that what I missed from the earlier version was the blood. Not the blood of Melissa, really, but I missed the dramatic essence, the dramatic content of the film. So I missed the reality in the movie, because the theater always tend to be a fiction. And despite of the fact that I'm telling in my play a very real story of the death and of the resurrection of my mother, I want to just juxtapose the death and the resurrection of Melissa in the movie. So I wanted to find the moment of the death of Melissa, and I found it.
Yes, you did. Marius is wondering, was there a script guiding the sequence of the scenes and some elements of dialogue, or maybe all was first filmed and then assembled in the editing room?
Well, it was a script. It was a script, but the script, it was very general. My idea was to create the sequences. I mean, 7, if I'm not wrong, 7 major scenes from Juliet, and then to put together as much as possible material to document the life of the actress, and then to leave room and space and time for myself and for my friends to go through this material and to find the shape of the movie. Because the first version of the movie, it was, from my point of view, it was a little bit too nice. And it was very hard for me to present in a too nice way the reality of Melissa's life, which has become so close to me, to us, and so important and meaningful for myself.
Thank you. I can grab one if you. Melissa, from Jeremy, Melissa, did your experience playing Juliet many, many times shape how you responded to your first husband? Help and harm. Whew. Wow, what a question. Yes, it was very difficult to, I can remember very clearly before performances, trying to connect to my own marriage as fuel to perform Juliet and discovering that to be a trap, a real problem. And having to create a fiction, frankly, of András's father, very distinctly a fiction in my heart. And the gap or the dissonance that was causing me weekly and monthly, the fact that I was not in the kind of relationship that I could mine from in order to play this role. So yes, I think that it was hard. I mean, you know, I'm performing one of the largest, most romantic, epic love stories. And so that's a tall order for any normal marriage to live up to, but mine especially. But also I think it maybe helped me fight for survival, fight for something better than what I was currently living in. Yeah, that would be my answer. Marie also asked if I could talk a little bit about my evolution to work with trauma and how does the theater serve this work. I will say that I don't think I really understood how powerful the theater could be as a healing tool until I experienced something even more traumatic a few years ago and suddenly discovered that I could no longer play in the theater, that I had to leave my own work because I didn't have access to my body in the way that I needed to play on stage. And so I fired myself from my own production and had to seek out my own physical work to return to my body as a safe space again. And so the process of reclaiming my own body became a tool that I could offer others as well. And I've started now offering movement therapy for trauma rehabilitation in Chicago's prisons and hospitals. So it's become a real labor of my life to try personally to fight for embodiment and the body as the first piece of real estate that we possess and the one thing that we can maintain and care for no matter what is happening outside of our immediate self. And I think the longer I spend time in the theater, the more I understand the weapons that we wield, the way that we can harm or help each other through this corporeal art form where we are embodied with one another in a space. Normally, obviously, this is surreal and virtual, but in normal conditions, we are together with each other, wrestling with all the highs and lows of being a human being. And this is what drives all of my interest in the theater, finding out how far this tool can reach, how much it can heal or repair and not just entertain. One more question maybe before we transition, those two. Okay, so we have two questions that are together. One is, I was surprised by how abrupt the ending of the film came. Was this part of your plan to, quote, leave the audience alone? And then the next question, which is similar, is what determined a running time under 40 minutes? Did you set out with that length in mind, or did that just end up feeling right? Or it is perhaps about fitting into the requirements of film festivals? András.
Well, yes, the film, it's a good observation. It's very abrupt. Well, I need to tell you that for me, it's very hard to watch a woman crying in a very sincere way. Even on the stage, it's very hard for me when she's playing that she's crying, because suddenly my body recalls my mother crying in the prison camp and trying to hide herself to not to be noticed by us, by the kids, that she's now lost. She cannot provide food for us, which happened especially in the winters. The winters were very hard for me and for us. So it takes for me days, and I wake up in the night to process this crying, and I am an Eastern European. There are moments what I don't want to explain. I want to live it like this, and I feel, or I know that it will hurt probably people, not making a smooth ending of the movie. But I cannot work otherwise. You know, the shape of the movie, it's another confession too. Well, the time, you know, the time after a while, it is decided by the movie, not by you. Like a novel, the length of a novel or the length of a play or a poem. You are very lucky when you are not measuring the length of the thing you are writing about, but the piece of art will decide about the length. I think that for me, reaching the moment of that resurrection with Elijah, the young actor Elijah, who was a miracle during the shooting and offered for us a lot of energy and joy, and yes, reaching that moment for me is when I try to grasp the soul of the audience and lift it up as high as possible. So I think that the abruptness is a part of my dramaturgy also when I'm writing plays also. So this is how I feel represented in this movie.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We will keep your questions and consider other ways that we might be able to answer them, not today. For those of you who are being introduced to Theater Y through this film and through this virtual encounter, I wanted to zoom out for a moment and introduce you to the rest of the company. Now, in our 15th year, Theater Y is an international laboratory committed to a continuous rethinking of the practice of theater with people from all walks of life, while also stretching, mentoring, and developing a new generation of artists. We have an ensemble of actors ranging from 11 to 79, and we believe in radical hospitality, which for us means creating true community in Chicago by providing free theater for our city. Brian is going to show us a short video documentary now, which is from our 2019 production of Self-Accusation, where we removed the street side of our wall of the theater and made the city our backdrop and playground, exposing the production to the city itself. Here we go.
Okay, so free folk is free, on the word free. That's the cue to raise the hand and stand up. So let's do the line 1 more time.
It's important for everyone to have access to the theater because when you're doing it, you can express things that you might not ordinarily be able to express.
Stanislavski taught us that actors, we enlighten the human condition. So theater is there to represent the human condition. And so whose human condition are we representing, and who gets access to viewing that human condition? So instead of saying that this is free theater, it's part of a movement to have it accessible to everybody.
We think that theater should not be a luxury good. It should be like our bread and like our water. If we say we live in a democracy, one of the tenets of a democratic society is equal access to ideas and the debate of ideas.
Self-accusation. I feel like people are able to relate to the things that we're saying, because that was one of the things that we wanted to do, and we wanted to make people a part of it.
It's a collective confession, collective accusation, and we're unpacking something for everybody.
It struck me as an everyman story, a kind of recitation of pretty much everything that one goes through in the course of a lifetime, at least potentially, and maybe sometimes it's figurative and maybe sometimes it's literal.
And you can't hide behind the character. You can't hide behind a scene. Either you bring it or you don't. So I think self-accusation is probably one of the most humbling works I've ever done.
It's white hot. It's really terrifying and exciting to expose the ritual of the theater to the naked eye.
It makes you work, which is going to make you think, which makes you part of the theater that's being created.
What it has given us is this gift of being in a space with the most uncomfortable moments that we have by ourselves together. So it becomes this collective individual experience.
But I think that the journey for the audience is really an internal one. The whole conversation is really with yourself about how you are responding to what you're seeing. And to me, that is the show. The show is happening in your mind.
Art sort of is this invisible dialogue that is happening inside of each person. And so what art allows is for people to sort of have a window inside of each other's souls.
Each human being that I'm interacting with is a resource. It's a library. There's an entire museum, there's a study there. And that to me gives me fire.
People can contribute so much to the world, but they just have to see it, you know? Sometimes people need to see it and know that it's possible.
Like something about this, I don't know how, but it's really making people able to go through the next day in a positive way, to wake up and feel joyful, which is something we could not predict, but it's amazing that it's happening.
If a bunch of strangers can come together for free and create something that has so many different meanings and that stimulates your brain and stimulates your heart, that essentially like you want to wake up the next morning and go do something. And I think that's what Theater Y has been giving all of us that are a part of the show.
The power of breathing together with 50 other strangers while having an aesthetic, intellectual, and emotional experience, it's an education on how to be human.
So Theater Y creates radically hospitable spaces for communion through critical and intimate participation. Last year, we launched the Camino Project, a 5-mile walking performance, and with the support of the MacArthur Foundation, this has now become an annual and international project with cities lining up for landscape interpretation, that's what we're calling it, cities like Casablanca and Athens and Myanmar. We're using this entire year to partner with 11 neighborhoods from Logan Square to Inglewood to create next year's Camino project, hopefully, walking Chicagoans around the city along the Emerald Necklace. And with your help, we will submit this film into festivals in 2021 and officially roll it out. We welcome your support and your ambassadorship in any way that you feel compelled moving forward. We'll return to Chicago's prisons as soon as they're not on lockdown to provide movement therapy for trauma rehabilitation. As a company, we are deeply committed to Black lives and the fight for deep reparations in our city, our country, and the world. There are very exciting announcements on the horizon, which we will wait to reveal at our member party this December. New partnerships with WBEZ's Steve Bynum and Worldview Solutions, who calls what we are doing together a manifestation of the power of love. So please stay tuned. We're so grateful for your company, your time, your investment this weekend, your support. You are invited to engage with this community at any level. Our work is possible thanks to members who donate monthly to keep our doors open to everyone. And you get a front row seat to whatever new experience we've discovered together. I believe in bioluminescence, which is the biological phenomenon that causes certain sea creatures to illuminate when they come together and form a critical mass. We ignite one another in community, grassroots, truth-seeking, brave spaces to sharpen and be sharpened, to feel deeply, and to heal and reconstruct our identity together. Thank you for banding together with us to create the things we wish existed.
Thank you, Melissa, and the ensemble for all you have done this year to create high quality, outstanding theater that can be accessed by everyone in Chicago community without charge. You make real sacrifices with your lives that enrich our lives, and you provide us with great theater experiences. During this difficult year, more than ever, we rely on the generosity of our members for support, which makes the work of Theater Y possible. When you make a donation above $55, you become an annual member. Since we all have different abilities to donate, we would ask that each of you this afternoon make a contribution based on your own capacity. You can use your credit card to select a membership level for one-time annual contribution or an ongoing monthly contribution. A monthly contribution is especially appreciated because it allows Theater Y to plan its year with more consistent resource base. So let me thank all of our ongoing supportive members who can make an additional contribution today, and thank everyone who can now support us for the first time.
Thank you, András, for this film. And our whole team, Peter and Dunay and Mohammed and Justin and Kevin and so many more. I wish I could properly introduce you all, but that will have to wait for our official premiere. Thank you to Evan and my family for your willingness to be vulnerable beside me, although you had no choice. And to my grandfather, to whom this film is dedicated. Thank you to our hosts, to Nelson and Veronica, to the rest of the breakout room hosts that are here, to our foundations, and to all of you, our guests and supporters. As Lilla Watson says, if you are coming to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you are coming because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Thank you for working together with us. My friends, we've reached the end of our time all together. Those of you who are guests of our hosts, we're going to send you into your breakout rooms. You can always come back if you don't like it there. Those of you who are here on your own, you're welcome to stay and chat with us as long as you wish to for any last burning questions. Thank you again to all of you, and we'll see you next time somehow or another. And those of you sticking around in the room, feel free to unmute yourself. If you wish to speak, just type, please unmute me in the chat box, and Emily will gladly unmute you and you can talk directly to us. If you want, yes, please, Dan Chrisman, I've got you. Hi, Dan.
Hi, guys. It's really great to see all of you. I just wanted to say, like, I don't know, this experience and watching this film, particularly on today, has, I don't know, we talk about quarantine, and I feel like I've been in like a 2-year quarantine, and just of the soul and of not feeling connected with this kind of thing anymore. And watching this has really, really given me hope and a renewal of my soul, I would say. So that's all I wanted to say. I love you guys. I miss you.
Thank you, Dan. We miss you. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not gonna cry.
Nick is saying, T.S. Eliot once said that he knows a poem is finished when he can't make it any better. When do you know something is finished, András?
Well, speaking about a poem or speaking about the writing, probably for me, it's a more familiar question rather than speaking about a movie, because on the field of the movie, I'm not that experienced. So I think that the work of art, generally speaking, it's about structure, it's about composition, it's about hearing. You know, when you offer yourself for your own poem, I am sure that the poem will decide when it wants to stop and when it feels complete. And but you should remain doubtful about yourself and your writing, and to let it to cool down, and to let it, to forget it, probably. Try to forget it. It's a special technique to forget your own writing, and then after days to come back to the same writing and to read it by like an unknown poem, like written by somebody else. And if that writing would kill you, that's a good poem.
Nick asks, what if it will resurrect you?
It's a good and an important question. So I think that this is another argument that you must be killed by your poem in order to be resurrected.
I see Liz typing, but you should just talk, Liz. You should just talk.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Well, like the playwright, I'm not going to butcher your name, sir, but I also fell madly in love with Melissa recently, and have been bioluminated by her vulnerability, formidability, and something that really strikes me, I haven't watched the movie yet, and I can't wait to watch the movie, but something that really strikes me, just that I can take away from this program, is this radical, let's use your word, this radical vulnerability that is required of this work, that it has these ramifications in the community, in the space where you work, that are so powerful. You know, the work that Melissa's doing in the prison as an extension of the work that she had to do in her own body, and just the way that this can be really a point of entry our own vulnerability as a point of entry into our radical self, into a radical political space, into is particularly when we think about the momentousness of this day, right? How really that is what's required, you know, at this inflection point in history. And that we kind of have to start with that willingness to be radically vulnerable. And how that, just that willingness, again, can be so politically, socially, economically powerful and have so many waves, you know, just to take that position. And it's the hardest thing in the world. It's like having your skin pulled off of you. And yet I just really want to tip my hat and say that it's everything. It's everything, because it is the origin point for the radical self in the community. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing in the community, and such a gift, and that you had to go through your own sin to make it happen, makes it all the more powerful and meaningful. So I'm really, really grateful just to be witness to that. So grateful, so grateful. And I can't wait to watch the movie. I'm scared to watch the movie.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
We have a couple questions that came in. In terms of,
and Melissa, I want to bid on that shrink too. So
great. Okay, great. We made a note. Emily,
I'll read it after I watch the movie. So
okay, great. Lorelei is asking, in terms of role taking and doing the, I'm not sure what that second word is, in doing the character, one can get so absorbed in the character that one loses oneself. I have not experienced this. I know that this is a common concern for actors that is often expressed. What if you forget who you are because you've played someone else so many times? That's not been my experience of self. I don't know. It would be nice if I could bury the true self under a lot of roles, but she continually reemerges. And honestly, I feel like the characters perpetually expand my true self. Suddenly I discover that, oh, wow, that lives lurking in there too. And now I have access, for better or worse, to that part of myself as well. That has been my experience. I think Juliet was a particular challenge because I respected her too much. I couldn't humanize her, or I couldn't believe myself to be her because she wasn't human for a while. I had to work hard to reduce her to my level in my own heart in order to play her. But she was always a privilege, and it was always remarkable to wonder if perhaps one day I might be able to try her on in my real life in any real way. She's my hero, and the gap between myself and her is very clear. Every time I do it, I'm very aware of when I'm having to reach outside of myself to claim something that she claims or does. And Nick's asking, Melissa, how has your demand for eternal love been responded to? Have you felt / are you feeling a response? Well, okay, so I engage in the theater because it's a creative act, meaning that it speaks things into being that were not true before. When you say a sentence, it is a constructive act. It puts something in the world that was absent until you put it there. And so I guess that's part of why I claim to be so presumptuous as to demand eternal love. I guess I'm getting a little bit bold from the fact that I'm in this art form that speaks things into being. And so I'm wanting to speak eternal love into being. And some of our partners that we'll tell you about in December talk about creating the things we wish existed. And so I'm just trying, I guess what I'm trying to do is take that as far as I can. Is it possible to speak eternal love into being? And maybe not, maybe I'm out of my depth, but I guess I'll find out, and I find it to be worth hoping for. I find a tremendous amount of hope from this community. This is my source of grace, repeatedly. Even this film, even András and I were speaking yesterday, and he told me not to be afraid. And I said, it's okay, because I don't really enjoy false affection anyway. This film will just clear out anybody who might have judged me if only they knew me better. And so the fact that you're here and still in dialogue with me is grace. And I get to experience that through this unveiling that the theater continues to be, and that I continue to see you here in dialogue with me is very healing. So that would be the eternal love I think I've found. Anything else? Yes. Yes. Do you want to speak, Adriana?
Yes, dear Melissa, I was so impressed, totally impressed. In fact, you know that I hate theater. And I love authenticity, and I love projects where life enters into art and completely invade it. And it seems to me that what I saw was an invasion of your life on an art project. And I was very, very touched because I praised a lot your presence in my life, of course, but then also I was impressed by the authenticity and there were so beautiful I don't know, pieces of truth there and of authenticity. And I said that I hate theater, but also it can be a way to I love theater when it open us to our authenticity, which is really possible if we avoid some traps that yes, I really loved immensely what you've done, what all of you have done. And I love that, well, words are in a way not enough in this moment, but I really, it touched me a lot, of course. And I love that life part in it, and authenticity, and the courage of authenticity, and the beauty of something that is life beyond art, beyond theater, beyond anything, which is just a heart and a mind, recognizing, I don't know, the place it should have in reality, in a way. I just I don't know if it was it touched me immensely. And there were questions because I know you. I first met you when part of the story was there, and it really touched me a lot. And there were questions about you that I'd never asked, and it was like opening my heart. It was not just like opening your heart. It was like just open autopsy of the heart in a way, which is quite beautiful, and which is a part of what art should be. Yes, looking inside our hearts and inside our minds, and see how can we make the reality around better in a performative way, of course, because we can change it in a performative way. Love you.
Thank you, Adriana. She traveled especially to find Wi-Fi to be with us today, because in her special country, which she's building in Romania in the mountains, there's no Wi-Fi. So she went to her hometown to be with us today. Thank you for coming. Okay, we have a few questions that have come in. Do you ever worry about losing your audience, or that they won't have ears to hear? András, do you want to take that question?
You know, in order to gain your own audience, it's unavoidable that you are losing some time. The audience. In order to have your own audience, that requires a big investment, spiritual investment, intellectual investment, but also a consistency in what you are doing. This question reminds me the opening production of Waiting for Godot at Théâtre du Babylone in Paris. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. At the first, when was the first opening, so the world premiere, it was a big scandal. People leaving the production during while they were performing. And then afterwards, some of them, they realized that they got scandalized, and the problem is not with the performance, and it with them. And they kept becoming back to see the performance. And that performance was on stage for decades after this event. So I think that it is very important to be consistent to your own language, to your own meanings, to your own thoughts. You want to deliver or to spread around. And also it's very important to be open and accept the failure. You know, there is no theater maker without meaningful failures. A failure could be a flop, could be one of the most important self-understanding moments for yourself. The audience is a tricky thing. You know, one of my best friend, he's an internationally renowned and very well-known theater maker. He's a director, stage director. His name is Silviu Purcareta. He says that he creates his his performance is for a virtual audience, which is present in his soul. And he wants to please that virtual audience present in his soul. And that would mean for me to take a risk. And I'm sure that your own audience is waiting for you. And you are waiting for your own audience. So that's require an important investment. Yes, I agree that you have to be authentic, first of all, in front of yourself. You have to have an authentic image of yourself in your own mirror. And your own mirror should be the most sharp, is the sharpest mirror in your life. So I think don't be afraid. Go on the stage, go naked, I mean spiritually naked. Don't try to be nice. Don't try to be accepted, but accept your audience, no matter who are them.
Part of my addiction to the theater has happened because I find that I'm most capable of mercy towards myself when I experience the way I feel about the audience, the pity that I feel. Pity is an ugly word, but it's hard for me to explain this. When I'm on stage and I'm looking at the crowd, people are pitiful. We are pitiful. I mean, it's a really sad state of affairs that we work through. And I feel deep pity for the public when I'm on stage. And somehow that pity reflects back to me. And I'm able to find mercy for myself in the process of that loop, which is really addictive because I don't quite know how to find it until I feel it for someone else, and then I absorb it as well. I was just talking with a man who's going to help us create a puppet program for youth in North Lawndale, and he was saying that teenagers are very difficult because they have so much self-judgment that there's no sincerity. And I thought, wow, what a crazy sentence. So in the conversation of what András is talking about, where you have this very sharp mirror image of yourself, you also can't couple it with self-judgment because that will kill your sincerity. So it's a very fine line that you are walking in relation to yourself of complete awareness and non-judgment, which is a very difficult sweet spot, I find, to live in as an artist.
Lisa, let me continue this by telling that when Juliet, which you performed, I don't know, more than 300 times, Juliet, when the world premiere of Juliet in Budapest, it was a little bit like the world premiere of Waiting for Godot, because I received very bad reviews at the beginning, like somebody writing that, oh, what a shame, dear fantastic actress playing this hopeless play. But the way they were argued, I felt that this will be my best play.
Wow.
And this play has become the most successful play, even in the Hungarian culture, because it was presented many times in Hungary also. But the same production, which was attacked by some people violently, was running for more than 3 years in the downtown, in the Hungarian Broadway. I showed to you that theater, the Thalia theater in the downtown. You remember the beautiful street crossing the Andrássy Boulevard. And it was performed for 3 years. and then thanks to Melissa, translated into English, and because of Melissa, the English career of the play has developed since that.
Wow. Okay, we have a few more questions. Karen is saying, as a member of Melissa's family, I want to thank you, András, for the way in which the film held in tension the horrifying limitations of human love and the overwhelming yearning and desire to abandon yourself to eternal love.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very nice. Very beautiful.
We can write a book about that now.
Right? Yes.
Steve is saying, oh wait, Mohammed has his hand raised. So maybe we start with Mohammed. Yes, Mohammed, what's up?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you all for honoring me to be within the presence of you all. I would love to share my experience with you guys through making that film, and being surprised by how it's been turned out. I'm super glad it turned out really well. Actually, I was so happy that I started showing it to a few of my colleagues around here. I was everyone was like, "Oh, that's exciting!" And I actually had some reviews on the music.
Mo, where in the world are you now?
I'm home actually. I flew here.
In Cairo.
Yes, Cairo.
Mohammed was our cinematographer for Performing Juliet, in case you don't know that, but he's in Cairo now. Yes. Go ahead, Mo.
And it's been such a pleasure to share that experience. Going back to that experience, my question will be going to András. How did that experience for being a director for a movie, coming from a theater, have changed you?
Mm-hmm. So nice to see you, Mohammed. Especially because I have a favorite soccer player. His name is Mohamed also, Salah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And he's an Egyptian also. He's not really a soccer player. He's an artist of the ball. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your question. Go Liverpool. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, it's a very important question, because you know what is the spiritual experience about doing a film? In a film, it counts the 1,000th part of a second.
Yes.
And this is the spiritual experience about it. You can be wrong with this 1,000th fragment, this fraction. And for me, it tells a lot about what does it mean to be human. We are not aware but that we are composed by these fractions, by these fragments. And we don't feel in what way we harm people in this 1,000th part of a second. So since then, Mohammed, since then, I keep telling to my students that don't count that your audience won't notice when you are lazy on the stage and you take a break and you are not present, because they notice it and they feel it and they know that now you want to save yourself instead of saving the second and the part of the second and the fraction of the second. So this is the so important experience for me for the working in a movie, because it's like I worked and I'm still working right now with composers. Now I'm writing an opera with a great and fantastic Hungarian composer. And it's so different to see. He is writing 1 minute of music in 1 day. In 1 day, my friends. So I think that it's important to go through this kind of experiences and to be aware
100%
about the persons around you and with you, and to be aware about your life also.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I've been taking the same course in my life for the past 3 years. I've been practicing music, and yeah, I totally hear you, like how you grow as an artist, and understand that your capacity is not limited, it's unlimited. It just takes a little bit of work and time and dedication. You could definitely go somewhere. It's been, yeah.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
For what?
For the question. I know Karen has been waiting. Karen, what would you like to ask? And then I'm going to ask Steve's question from the chat.
But sure.
Thank you, everyone, András and Melissa. I watched the film and I saw the preview, and I was really curious about 3 things. I was wondering how you met your first husband and what he did for a living. That's the first part of the question. Then the second part, when you began to talk about the violence, how you thought you were like, it meant you were more in love or passionate. That's the second part of the question. What thought process led you to think that the violence you were encountering, even though you started hitting him, as you said, but what led you to believe that that meant you were probably more in love, more passionate about your love with your first husband?
So I met him on Mackinac Island. We were both driving horse-drawn carriages for a summer. We met in the barn, and he told me that he was an inheritor. That was his vocation, his stated vocation when I met him. He was a fine artist, a painter. So that's the answer to his vocation, I think. He lost his fortune immediately, so the inheritor part was just a catch. Not that I was interested in that anyway, but just to say that's not what got me. And the violence question, oh, this is hard. I mean, I don't think my family is still on the call. Oh yes, my parents are here. My parents have a very kind relationship. I mean, I wanted something more dynamic. I'm just gonna put this out there. Growing up in my household was very secure and stable, and I was interested in understanding what a more passionate household might look like. And so I wanted deep love. And when it came with violence, I excused the violence by saying, oh, this must be what deep love costs. Because you don't hate something that you don't love. And I knew that. I knew that the depth of our animosity connected to the depth of our affections somehow. You know, you turn on someone because you need them too much. So there was some truth to it, I think. Some truth to the fact that it was I don't know. I'm still working through this. I mean, I'm in a new marriage with a wonderful human being, and I can't say that we've perfected it. It's far better and growing better daily. And I'm still the same person, sadly, in either marriage. I'm still myself, and that's the biggest problem I find. And I'm working through, rage, what rage means and how to process rage in general in a body. I think that rage is a really compelling question, and I don't understand its relationship to love. I guess that's kind of a lifelong investigation, but it was definitely my misunderstanding that they had to go together, and I'm working hard to repair that misunderstanding. Thank you, Karen. Steve is asking, as I've observed, and certainly not to generalize or stereotype, the Romanian people are quite pious and embrace mystery. Much of that comes through their Eastern Orthodox roots, but also pre-Christian mysticism. Yet the culture can also be very superstitious and incorporate these superstitions into how they lived centuries ago and live still today. Does this Slavic mind, Slavic ethos, especially that within the Romanian soul, find its way into your work in general, András?
Well, no, because I'm an ethnic Hungarian and half Austrian, but I know what I am. You are speaking about. In the prison camp, one of the prisoners transformed illegally his own barrack. We stayed in small barracks there in a chapel, and we were the only Hungarians in this prison camp, my mother and the 7 kids, and Mother Mary, who helped us to survive the camp. And we went to the secret services to this small barrack chapel, and there were and I was deeply touched by that dark space with 2 candles flickering. And what struck me there, it was when this prisoner priest ended the service, he kissed the ground. And that was for me an extremely ununderstandable movement, because how somebody would kiss the ground of prisonship there. And I remember people leaving the space, and I sneaked back and I kissed myself the ground. And even today I feel that touch of the ground in this prison camp. So I think that we should separate the superstition from the experiencing the cosmos, the cosmic experience. When I was there, I felt that the freedom, the real freedom, nobody can take away from you. And if you experience the real freedom which is in you as being the core of your humanity, that freedom which can express love towards even persecute you, then I realized that there is something else much more important I ever can explore. I need probably a 1,000 long life. I hope I won't get it, to explore this kind of freedom. Probably because of that, I have become later on an artist. To express that meaning of the human being, the core of the human being identity, which is above all kind of I don't know, political games, social games, identity business and games, etc., etc. I don't know if I responded. I have great Romanian friends, artists, theater makers, and they express extremely complex and valuable theater. Here, I know that Melissa came here for several times, and she loves also the Romanian theater and the Romanian art generally.
I do. Steve's response is there can be no love without freedom. Yeah, Steve, do you want to say anything? I'm happy to unmute you.
Thank you. Yeah, and at the end, I guess what I was meaning is more towards your focus on this particular play, just by the terminology you used before the breakout session, like resurrection and confession, and you speak in terms of communion and community, and there's a Eucharistic understanding. It's not necessarily structured religion, but as you talk about, just more that's cosmic. And just the fact that love, there can be no love without freedom, because love demanded without freedom is it's a psychosis, you know. Love given without freedom, it's a pathology as well. And so the ability, and I guess from the film I got that as well, is that the inability to be free is that when you're trapped, it's certainly not love, it's something else. And the inability to give love freely or accept love too is also its own form of prison. And so in any event, oh, someone asked a question. So the painting in my background, that is Ira Aldridge and Taras Shevchenko. Shevchenko is the bard of Ukraine. They were contemporaries. Ira Aldridge is an actor and singer. And they came along in the mid-1800s. Aldridge had to leave the United States because he couldn't have his genius realized here, Shakespearean actor. And he spent time in London. And actually, he's one of there are 33 actors in the memorial at Stratford-on-Avon, Shakespearean actors, and he's the only one of African descent who's recognized there. And Shevchenko was born a slave. And when his master started to travel, that's when he began to get into the arts, and then he began to write about the Tsarist regime, and then he was imprisoned and exiled. And in any event, they met a few times and developed a very close and intimate friendship over the years. And they have loved and appreciated the sort of the slave narrative of the other, the Ukrainians under Russia, and African peoples in America. And I look at that as a model for myself in that American nomads like Josephine Baker, Paul Robeson, James Baldwin, who had to leave America in order to realize their genius. And that is still a case for a lot of artists today. They have to leave in order to be recognized. And I just truly appreciate European theater, especially Eastern European theater, because it just has a soul to it that just resonates with me as an African American. So,
oh, thank you. It's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for the painting also.
Steve, I if I can ask you, will you tell us really briefly the story that you told me a couple days ago about placing the scripture on your heart and why it's on? Yeah.
So there's a Hasidic story that's classically attributed to Hillel the Elder. Hillel the Elder is one of the all-time great scholars of the Torah and the Talmud. And there's a story of he was with his students, and they said to him, Rabbi, you've spoken and said that we should place the words of the Torah upon our hearts. But shouldn't it be that you place the words of the Torah within our hearts? Why do you say upon our hearts? And the rabbi paused and he says, yes, I understand this saying may be complex to you, but when you get older, you'll fully understand it and you've lived life. But I say that you place the words of the Torah upon your heart so that when the heart breaks, the words will fall in. And it is only through the breaking of the heart that the words of the Torah will have meaning and significance to you. Mm-hmm. And that just shakes me every time I hear it. And that art is that vehicle that breaks the heart, because sometimes we cannot hear or contemplate or process hard truths until our hearts are broken and we are humbled. And in that moment of extreme humility, we're open and we can hear. And I believe that the work that you do and the work that Melissa does is that vehicle to break the heart so that the words of love can fall in and we can listen and grow and live.
Thank you, Steve. I can't imagine closing us out any better than that. It's past 3:15. I think we should let you all go. You can reach out to us anytime at info@theater-y.com. If you have any last questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, András. Thank you to all the guests. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, friends.